everybody, it's Claire here from Sewing by Claire, and today we're going to be carrying on with our kit from Lilly Rose Dolls, and that's for Byron the Highland Cow, who is a 16-inch character. Now we've already completed Byron the character himself, and as I said in the other video, the main character, the head and the body, is the same whether you are making Emma, Christoph or Byron, because all of those three Highland cows, the construction is all the same, so you can follow that same video and you'll be able to get a really good result for your character. We've already done the video for the full front trousers, and now we're going to be working on his waistcoat. But before we turn the camera down and get started, I want to say a really big thank you to Claire and to Richard of Lilly Rose Dolls, because they have gifted the kit to me in order that I can bring this sew-along video to you. And I do hope that you really get some value from the videos, either whether it's knowing that the video is there to help you or just help you with your confidence if you've not tackled one of these characters before, and that the video, seeing it actually made, helps you on your sewing journey. I do try and pack as many tips and tricks as I can. So just before we tilt the camera down, here's our wonderful Byron here, or Emma or Christoph, and this is the full front trousers. Now just incidentally, the full front trouser pattern is available as a standalone as well, so if you wanted to go along and buy this for one of your other characters, you want it to be part of their changeable wardrobe, then you can just pop along to the website in order to order your copy, and I'll pop the website address up here for you so that you can go directly there should you wish to buy any of the kits or patterns, or just have a little browse and see what's available. We've got quite a few Lilly Rose Dolls sew-along videos available now on my YouTube channel, so do go and take a browse at the playlist if you'd like to, and see what else we've got available for you. Okay, so I will pop in a little Back to the Future video in a few moments. Obviously it'll be a lot longer on from me, but just to let you know, so that you can see the finished waistcoat and then decide if that's a quality and a finish that you are happy with and you want to carry on watching the video. It just saves you having to jump to the end of the video, but then once we've got that out of the way, then I'll tilt the camera down and we'll get started with the sewing. So it's a little bit later, and here is Byron, I don't know if I've got his name, Byron in his lovely waistcoat. And I know the light isn't brilliant with the colours, they're very similar, aren't they? But there's the back of his waistcoat. It does sit nicely, I promise, it's just up on his shoulder slightly. And there's the front, and he's got a little neckerchief on there as well. So that's the waistcoat that we are sewing today, and I hope that you like the finish that we've got and the look of that, and if you do, then carry on watching and I'll show you how I made it. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is open up your kit and take out your pattern and your instructions. You're also going to need your waistcoat outer fabric, and you're also going to need your waistcoat lining fabric, and we've got two pieces of the same one for the jacket, one for the lining, so let's just pop that back in there for the moment. There's also a packet with your 3 remaining buttons in for the waistcoat, so I'm just going to leave that on top of the box at the moment, just so that that keeps that all together for me. I'll put his little neckerchief ribbon away as well. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to then do is work with the pattern. So if we just go through the pages to find the pages for the waistcoat, they're all on one page. And you'll have seen before, if you've been sewing along with me, then you'll have seen before me adding the seam allowance onto these patterns, because the patterns that come for Lilly Rose Dolls don't have any seam allowance on them unless it already states so. So I've been on and I've drawn my little marks 1/4 inch away from the side, joined them all together, and then that's given me a tracing line for when I use my, let's see, get the right pattern piece here, waistcoat front. So then I can put my tracing paper over the top. Obviously it's a much bigger sheet. I draw around each pattern piece on that seam allowance line, and then cut out my pattern piece, making sure to transfer any markings like grain lines or any notches at all. And then I cut it out of tissue paper, and that way then I keep my master copy of the pattern intact. That'll stay in my box, and then if ever I want to make this character or this outfit again, I've got everything I need in one place. Because if in the future I cut out this collar pattern perhaps and it got lost while I was making it, then I wouldn't have that collar piece again to be able to draw it off. Whereas if I trace it off in my paper, keep everything together, if I lose anything, then it's all together. Obviously I've mentioned this before on my channel, but just for those who are jumping straight into the waistcoat. Okay, so once you've got all your pattern pieces cut out like this, you should just need the 3 actually, which is not very many at all, is it? So we've got the waistcoat front, the waistcoat back, and the waistcoat collar. Just remember that any fold lines don't need any seam allowance adding. It's just that because we don't sew that seam, that's going to be opened up onto the fold. And the same on the collar. The collar has got this fold line here as well, so you don't need to add seam allowance to those. But otherwise, add seam allowance to your edges. I use 1/4 inch. That works really well for these smaller characters and gives me a really nice finish. Plenty to work with. Once you've done that, you've got your fabric out as well, and what I am going to do is just take a moment to remove the little labels that have been put on, just to let us know which bit is which is always helpful. And then there'll be some packing lines on the fabric here. You can see those on the wrong side there. So I'm just going to take a moment and just press these pieces of fabric out so that those packing lines are removed, and we're ready then for our laying out our pattern and cutting out. So just having a little look at the pattern instructions and just understanding how everything all fits together, and also what we need to cut out. Now what I need you to just have a quick look at is that on the actual pattern here on the waistcoat, because there's these little revers here on the top of the waistcoat and that collar, then actually both sets, so the inside and the outside of the front of the waistcoat are both cut in the golden fabric, and also both sides of the collar are cut out in the golden fabric. And then on the back of the waistcoat, although we can't see it, it says to cut one in this green lining and then one in the gold as well. So we're just going to bear that in mind as we're working through this and placing the pieces. There is plenty of fabric, so when we're looking at the pattern, in actual fact, we only need one of this lining cutting out for the back here, so we can take a nice small section here, just working away from the selvage edge, which is there for me, I think. So we're just using my nails just to move this fabric back until we've got enough. Just have a look and make sure that you're happy with the direction that the pattern print is going, and then when you're happy, we are going to have a look on this grain line, because we don't have a regular line to check, a selvage edge to check. Then I'm just looking at the fibres on the back of my piece of fabric and just making sure that they're going north to south, so that we've got that. So this is the back. So once we've got that placed, then we can use pins. Oh, excuse my squeaky chair. I really do need to work out why it's squeaking. And then we're going to just pin these, making sure that that fold line is directly onto the folded edge of the fabric. Just hold that onto there for the moment. So that's all we've got on that one. And then onto this one here, we are going to need to cut out a back of the waistcoat as well. So I'm going to fold this one over. Now have a look at your design and see which way you want your pattern to go. I want mine to go this way. So just make sure you've got it right. And we've got a selvage edge, so we can make sure this fabric is nice and straight as well. And the way that we do that, because grain lines are important on clothing, because if you don't get your item cut out on straight of grain, and it's more important when you're working for adult or children's wear, but even on these little characters, it's still worth practicing that and getting into the habit of doing it, is that if you don't have a straight of grain when you cut out your pattern pieces, and the grain line is denoted by this double-edged arrow just here on your pattern pieces, then it can mean that when that garment is being worn, it just looks a little bit off, or it just wants to twist slightly. So the first thing that I tend to do, let me just get my quilting ruler and a pen, is I'm just going to extend my grain line. Where you've got a fold line, you don't need to worry so much, because the fold line will be your grain line in effect, because it's going to go against that grain edge. So I'm just going to move my grain line across. I'm choosing where there's a nice long run, and I'm putting my line that I'm using on the existing grain line. So that's directly on top of it, so I don't change it, I'm just moving it across to where I can get a longer run. And I still mark it with my arrow top and bottom like that. So I've just moved the grain line from here across to there by drawing a parallel line. So just on the exact same line as this way in direction across here, but it's much longer. And what we do is we get a much greater accuracy over a long space, and those quilting rulers are great for doing that. The other thing that we're going to do now, just before we place our pattern piece on here, is we are going to take our tape measure, and we are going to look for a selvage edge. Now the selvage edge is this one that's bound on the edge there. Can you see it's got that line? And if I show you from the other side, you can see that that's a bound edge. We don't ever sew with a bound edge because it's usually woven slightly differently to the main body of the fabric, and that can shrink more than your main body of your fabric can, so you wouldn't sew with that. So we keep it just sort of out of the way of where we are working. But what it does tell us is that this line is perfectly straight. So if we take our tape measure and we measure from that grain line, from that selvage edge across to our folded line here, and I've got 29.5, and then we go down to the bottom and we put that same piece of the tape measure on, I can see that my grain line, oh, you can't see because I'm slightly off camera, let me just move this across. So if I look at the top here, I'm 29 across to the white line there, and that's smack on. And then if I come down here, 29.5, and I'm off my piece of fabric, look. So I need to move out this bottom edge slightly, whilst not moving the top edge, hopefully. So it's just twisted slightly. And then I measure again. So let's get our 29.5 to there, and let's try again. 29.5 is to there. That's fine. Now you'll notice we've got a slight twist on the fabric, got a little bit extra at the top here and a little bit less at the bottom there. So we just need to be aware of that when we're placing our pattern pieces. But what we're going to do is we'll take the collar piece and we're going to place that on the fold here. Now I'm making sure that I've got both thicknesses of my fabric at the bottom there. I'm just going to pop my pins in to hold that in place. And I just want to make sure that my pattern back on my lining is going to fit in there, and it is. That's fine. Oh, let's do that one first. I think really that's probably better, isn't it? So this is the back. So we just want one of this back. So just put a couple of pins on to anchor it just whilst I'm working out my location. Now remember, we need 2 of the collar and I've only got 1 at the moment on here, so I need to make sure that I've got enough length down the bottom here for that second piece, because I've also got to cut out 2 pieces from each of these. So I need to make sure that the front also is straight. So just roughly place your pattern piece on at the moment. And there's enough at the bottom here to be able to give me enough for that collar. And then I'm going to measure from the top of the grain line across to my reference point. So we're 20.1 there. Let's just put a pin at the top here. Just take a little bite of your fabric. It'll just allow you to pivot your pattern piece. And then if we go down to the bottom and measure across, and we're 20.2. So I know that that's not quite straight. Move that until that's right. So 20.1, that's now straight. So I can pop a pin in at the bottom there to hold that in place, and now I can cut out the rest of the fabric pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the one back. I'm going to move my pattern piece across so that I've got the 2 again because I need to cut 4 of my front, and I'm going to move my pattern piece across here, and what the gap that's left over from the bottom here will be enough for twice of that length for my bottom of my collar, so I'll use that for that. Okay, so if you want to get yours all pinned on like this, and then we'll get everything cut out and then we'll start to sew. Okay, so when we finish cutting out, what we'll end up with is 2 collar pieces that have been cut on the fold. So that's those 2, and these have been cut out both out of the gold fabric. So that's those 2 there. Now they've got a little marking A in the corner, but we don't need to do anything with that at the moment. We just sort of need to note it. We've also got these 4 sets of fronts. Now this pattern's also got the A, but that's just going to show us that the collar goes right to the end just there at the end. So we don't need to mark anything on these pieces. But all of these 4 pieces, 2 sets of 2, are also in your gold fabric. So let me just open those up so you can see those as well. This will just help you give a visual check as well as to where you are with yours. That's those 4 there, and these are the 4 fronts. 1 set for the inside and 1 set for the outside because of that collar that folds back. So we've got those, and they don't need any markings put in on them, but we'll just keep all those together. But then on the back, I just want you to separate the two pieces of the back fabric because you've got one in the lining and one in the gold. So let's work with the lining first. So I've just taken the pattern off just to separate out those two pieces of fabric or two sets of fabrics. And now I'm just going to pop a pin in my pattern piece to attach it back to my fabric top and bottom. Because we're going to put some tailor's tacks in because we've got a little dot at the top here and then a curvy line and a dot at the bottom and then another curvy line. And this is called a fish eye dart. That's what that one's called. And so we're going to put a tailor's tack at the top and the bottom where we mark those placements of that fish eye dart with our thread because it's easier to take it out than it is run the risk of marking the fabric with a pen that then doesn't come out. And it's really easy. I've just got a hand sewing needle and I've threaded it with one single piece of thread that is double and I've put the ends together here. And then all I'm going to do is on top of that dot is I'm going to take a little stitch right the way through my fabric, out the other side and then back through again, so a little running stitch like that, right on top of that dart, and I'm going east to west and I'm going to leave a tail of at least an inch and a half is great. And then I'm going to change direction, so just turn your pattern piece round and take another stitch. So in reality this one's north to south over that dot, that's like that. And then pull your thread through, but this time you're going to leave a loop of your threads about the same length as your end is. And then you're going to cut off your thread, again leaving a long end. So you've got this tangle of threads just here, just sticking out of your pattern. And then what you do is you cut through the loop, so you get a tuft of threads. We're going to do that again at the bottom, so let's just put that one stitch through one direction first, leave a tail, twist our pattern piece just slightly, do the opposite direction. And if you look on the other side, can you see where that crosses on there with those threads? That's what you're wanting. You're wanting your threads to go through to the other side and to leave that little cross. So let's leave a tail and leave a loop and cut through the loop. Once we've done that, we can remove our pattern piece carefully by just taking our pins out. Now hold on to your threads as you peel your pattern piece back, just so that they don't get tugged out with your pattern piece. And we're going to do the same on your other back in a minute. And then what we're going to do is we're going to gently separate out these two sides of the fabric, but we don't want to take all the thread out, so you're going to leave a tuft of threads. So you've got a bridge of threads here, look where I can put my finger through those bridge of threads in two places. And then being very careful not to cut our fabric, we're just going to snip through both of those threads. And what that's done is it's marked those positions of those dots on both sides of our fabric for us, on the front and on the back. One place we've got a little cross, and one place we've got a tuft of threads that is about the same size as the dot. So what I want you to do now is to go ahead and just repeat that tailor's tack process onto your other waistcoat back. That's the word I wanted. Just my brain just went to stop for a moment then, because we also need to sew that in as well. And a dart will add shape so that on the back of our character's back here, where there's that scoop out, that hollow, just there before it reaches his bottom, it'll just take the waistcoat in there and take some of the loose fabric away on the waistcoat so that will sit really nicely. Okay, let me go and do my dart and then my tailor's tacks to mark my dart, and then if you choose a coordinating thread to go on your fabric here as well, and then meet me at the sewing machine and we'll have a look at sewing these darts before we move on. Okay, so I've got my machine ready, so let's just work with the one that we were working with before. So now what we're going to do is working with one side at a time. We're going to look for our marks that we've done, and if we think about the shape of our piece of fabric, so this is the side seams, that's the back of the neck, and this is the arm side. So we're going to take each of these, and the marks are north and south. So let's just turn them slightly so we can work with them. And we're going to fold our fabric directly on top of those marks. And I'm just putting a pin just to hold that together, probably towards the middle somewhere, just to hold that fabric in half. And what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to bear in mind that when we marked this fisheye dart, if we fold it in half on the pattern piece along there, we've only got about, not even a quarter of an inch, I don't think, really, have we, on the edge there. just under 1/4 inch really for the amount of fabric that we're going to scoop that we're going to take out of that pattern piece as we come back down again. Now you can draw if you wanted to, if you've got a heat erasable pen, you can measure in and then draw your dart onto your fabric if you wish to. Some people may be able to free sew it, but others may want to just do a little mark like that on it. Now, if you're dressmaking, you would start at the middle and you'd sew down to one dart, flip your fabric over and sew down to the other. But I think for these small characters, we're not going to be quite as precise as that. So we're going to start at this top dot, we're going to sew in along our curve, and then we're going to sew back out again to our dot. We might need to do something called pivoting, but I will show you how to do that. So, coordinating thread is in the machine. So I'm going to line my machine up and my needle on the machine so that I'm starting right on top of that tailor's tack. I can see it right on the fold of my fabric. And then we're going to take a couple of stitches forward, a couple of stitches back, and then put our needle in the work just so that we can work hands-free. And now I'm going to scoop around the fabric following that mark that we did. But as it sort of gets a bit tough, try not to pull on your fabric. Instead, leave your needle in the work, and I've got a button on my machine that does allow, whenever I stop sewing, my needle will always finish in the work. But if you haven't, then you will just need to use your hand crank, which is this one, and then just make sure that you move your needle so that it's down into your work, because then you can lift up your presser foot, and now your fabric is anchored under your machine. It's not going to go anywhere. So now you can gently change direction, do a few more stitches, and then as you come to the bottom of this dart, you can then change direction again so that you come out directly on top of the other tailor's tack. Take our needle out of the work. I'm going to cut my threads off. I did reverse at the start and stop, and you wouldn't normally with the dart, but just on these small characters, then I'm going to give us a little bit of a pass on those. And there I've sewn directly on top of my line, you won't be able to see it. So when I open this out now, can you see how it's wider at the bottom the fabric is and wider at the shoulders, but at the small of the back that piece of fabric has been taken out and it's added that shaping in there. All we've got to do now is then just pull on the threads for our tailor's tacks, and these should come fairly easily out. For any that don't, it just means that we've sewn through the actual thread itself. So cut it off one side close to where you're working and then pull on the other, and it'll come away really neatly. And the same on the other one. Some of them will pull out straight away and you'll see that, and then others have just got tangled up with our threads. So cut them off close to your fabric, and then they'll come away straight away nice and neatly. And we've got no fear of having any dots left on there at all. So I'm going to sew the other dart on this piece of this pattern fabric piece the same way to put the same shaping in, and then I'm going to repeat the same process on the back here as well of the outer of the waistcoat. So if you want to do the same, and then I'll meet you back here. So once you've finished, you've got your two pieces of fabric here, your lining and the back of your waistcoat, and they've both got these kind of shapings in the back there. And if we look on the inside, there's our two darts on that piece of fabric. Oops, extra piece of thread, and here's our two darts on that one. So just pop those to one side for the moment, because the next thing that we're going to be working with is the collar. So if we take our pattern piece off our collar, and then we're going to lay our collar down so that we've got right sides together, and we're going to match those raw edges. So let's put a pin just onto that end there, so that's all nice and matched. Let's get a pin onto the end here, so that's all nice and matched. And then I'm probably going to put one in along the middle here, along the back. Now there's quite a lot of shaping in this collar, so just be aware that it's not a straight line. So we're going to come up here, and then it's going to dip in slightly, comes out, dips in, comes out, and then down again. And we're going to start on this bottom edge. So if you look at the way that the collar goes up like that, that's the bit that we're going to have external. And this is this bit that's going to be attached inside the waistcoat when it's finally sewn. So the one that we want to sew is this longer, curvier line across the top here. So we're going to start at this side here. So I'm just going to turn mine upside down, and I'm going to start here, a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to sew all the way down here, and down to the bottom there. We're leaving this section here open at the moment. So let's get hold of our sewing machine. Let's get ourselves set up for a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So work out where that is on your machine in relation to your needle. And then we're going to do a couple of stitches forward and a couple of stitches back. And then we put our needle in the work just to hold everything tight. Now we're straight onto a curve, so we need to use this needle down function again so that we can pivot. And pivot is when you lift up your presser foot and you move direction. So we can do a few more stitches before we have to do any serious pivoting. I can see my fabric is starting to bunch up, so I'm going to leave my needle in the work, lift up my presser foot and turn my fabric very slowly and just do a couple more stitches and do the same again. So you're just following that curve as best as you can on your collar. Now we do need 2 sides to be identical, so just then follow along. Stop for your pins, we don't sew over pins, can mess up your machine. And then just sewing along the bottom here, around to this curve again. So needle in the work, and then let's start and pivot just a couple of stitches at a time. I'll take that pin out till we get into it. And we start to pivot around this corner. You're still keeping that, it's just trying to keep 1/4 inch away from the raw edges, so it's going to give us that nice end to the collar, and we're just going to reverse at the end. Take the needle out of the work, and then we're going to snip off our starting and our finishing threads. And that pivoting gives us a lovely flat line all the way along here, so that that's all nice and flat and smooth on these corners, as you can see. Now, because we've got to turn this the other way round, because we need this ultimately to have the right sides out, and if we turn it without clipping this corner here, then we're going to have quite a lot of bulk, and we don't want that in the seam, and it's going to be lumpy and bumpy. So you can either use something called pinking shears, which are these ones here with the triangular blades on them. And if you're using those, you can just start snipping at the bottom, and you're going to stay about 1/8 of an inch away from your sewn line, and you're going to go all the way around that edge there like that. And we can just take off this extra bit here that we just snipped off. If you don't have pinking shears, don't think everything's not lost. All you need to do is use your snips and your scissors, and then just using the point of your scissors only, you're going to take a series of triangles out of your fabric just by cutting first one direction and then the other. You're going to almost up to, but not through, your stitches. Can you see how those little triangles are forming? Hopefully you can. And we just go all the way around this edge. The sharper the curve, the closer together your little triangles need to be. So mine are all touching each other. Just on this corner, you can see why the pinking shears are a little quicker. They are a good investment if you're going to be doing some of these characters or dressmaking for yourselves. And then because we've not got many down here, let's just do one down here, and that will then just sort that out. Okay, so that's how that looks against the other side. Yep, very similar. Lots of bits all over my work surface. Let me just clear those. Okay, and then what we're going to do now is put a finger inside, and being careful not to push and tug this too much, we're just going to turn this collar round the other side. Excuse the car noise. And then we can then just push the edges of the collar out using what I got in here that I can use. I'll use the edge of the, and just use that round just to ease that out. You just want to be able to see your stitches just on the edge there, just so that you know that you're back to the straight edge. And then we are going to take this to the ironing board, and we are going to iron this flat. So I do find this wool pressing mat very, very useful for sewing these small characters, very nice and portable. And also I've got this little mini iron from Prim as well, which works really well. And all I'm going to do is just take my iron and just press this middle section first one way and then the other way, just to get that seam allowance and just get that edge out. And then by folding it over just nice and carefully. And because we're pressing on the outside of our fabrics, what I do like to use is a press cloth. Now this one's a silk organza one that I've cut off some meterage. It's a bit old and battered, but it does the job really quickly, because you can put it over the top of your fabric and you can see if you what you're pressing and how it's lying before you actually press it. Now if you've not got silk organza, you could use a tea towel, or you can use a pillowcase, or you can use a scrap of just fabric. Cotton lawn is best if you've got it. Just make sure it's 100% cotton, or in this case 100% silk, and then it will actually work well for you. It's not overly expensive, so don't worry, it's not £30 a metre or anything like that, and you only need a small amount, but it'll just protect your fabric when you are pressing from the high heat of the iron. So then just make sure those corners are pressed out nicely. And then let's just go onto this side as well and just make sure that's all pressed out nicely as well. And there we've got a nicely pressed. Don't worry about collar. Don't worry about these little bits of fraying at the end. We're going to sort that through. And what you can do is just put one side of your collar against the other, and just make sure that your curves on the edge of your collar there are just about the same in terms of the curve of them, because you want this to look as symmetrical as possible, and they are, so that's good. Okay, so let's just pop this ironing board away. We're going to need it later anyway, so don't put it too far, but for now we've just finished with it. And then what we're going to do now is we are going to take our jacket, and we have to now let's just get our bearings. So we've got one collar which is all ready to go. We've then got one back and a lining back, because then we want to put one pair of our fronts with the actual outside of the jacket, and then we need one that has the front with the lining of the jacket. Oh, I've got them the wrong way around, look. That was that one, that's it. So you need to make sure that when you put these down, when you put your fronts together, you've got this long straight edge and you've got right sides of your fabric up on both cases. Look, can you see how that is? Because if you've got two that are like that and this is a right side, then you know you've cut it out slightly wrong. But if you've had your fabric doubled, then you should be fine. Okay, so then let's just put one of these to one side. Let's put the lining to one side for the moment, and let's work on the outside. So we've got our back. Let's turn our back upside down, and then we're going to splay out these fronts so that the shoulder seam here is resting against the shoulder seam on the back of here. There's the back of the neck, here's the arm side, here's the waist seam, because that's upside down at the moment, and we've got these two here. This is our neck edge, this is our shoulder, arm side, and this is our bottom hem. And we're just going to take each of those at the same time and just twist them out so that we've got our shoulder seams together, because this will help us just with placement, because we need the arm side to follow round and we need the neck to follow round. Once you've done that, you can then pop your shoulder seam together and pick it up, and then we're going to pop 2 pins in just to hold the shoulder seam together, one at the start and one at the end. And then pop it back down again, just fold that out so you can see where you are, and then we're going to take the other shoulder seam now and we're going to fold that one over on top here as well, and then we're then going to pop 2 pins in just to hold that together as well. There we go. So once we've done that, then we're going to take this to the sewing machine. Now you have got to just be careful that you don't sew this other front in underneath that seam, so just be careful when you're sewing. And we're going to put this in the machine and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both of those shoulder points. So let's take our machine. I'm just going to fold that front out of the way for me so that I can go from one to the other. Mark up your 1/4 inch. Start stitching. Couple of stitches forward, couple of stitches back, then needle in the work, take out our first pin, sew across, stop for the second pin, and then reverse at the end. Needle out of the work, and let's take our threads off, and then we're ready to sew the next shoulder in exactly the same way. And whatever we're doing at the moment, we're sewing these shoulder seams for the outer, we're going to do exactly the same for the lining as well. So at the end, when we've sewn those 2 shoulder seams on the top there, when we put our piece of fabric down and open it out, everything's all looking right. We've got a neck and we've got our 2 arm size here. There's the hem and there's a hem. Eventually this will fold over like this and that will give us our lovely collar, but for now we've just got it like this. We're then going to take this to our ironing board and we are going to press these seam allowances open. So you can finger press them just to get them started. Always helps, just open them up and just press them with your fingers and that will help those to be started like that. Okay, so now I want you just to repeat that exact same process with your lining as well. I'll go and do mine and then I'll meet you back here. The thing that I have just done whilst I was pressing my shoulder seams is I've just pressed over my darts where I sewed those, so both of those 2, just to fold them along the way that they were sewn, and then I've laid it down the waistcoat back onto my pressing surface. I've got the wrong side up and then I'm going to splay out the bottom of the waistcoat whilst I just put some pressure on that dart, just to sew that dart in towards the centre, so the bulk of that little curve that we had. And I'm just going to turn it round and do the same. So splay out the bottom, press it towards the top and then splay out the shoulders and then press that in, and that will help press that extra shape into there for you. Okay, let's put the iron board out of the way just for now. And what we're going to be doing, if you just put your lining to one side for the moment, don't lose your pattern pieces, and we're going to be working with the collar. Now just have a look at the placement of the pattern on your collar and see if there's one side that you like better than the other. Now with mine, I've got my patterns going up to the collar there, but here I've only got half. So the side that I like the most is the side that's going to go down against my waistcoat front. So let's just first of all fold this in half and find the halfway point. Let's put a pin in there just to hold that for me, so I can see where that halfway point is on the collar just there. And then what I'm going to do is, making sure I've got the right side that I want of my collar facing down, is I'm now going to pin that centre back of the collar to the centre back of the waistcoat. And I could see that because it was the opposite end of that scale of the, could see, let me show you why I know that it's there. Hold on one second, I'll just take that off. Because if you look here, there's a little bit of a V at the top. We'll probably soften this in a minute just to make that a nicer shape, but that's that in the middle of that V is the middle of the centre back of this piece. And so I'm going to put my collar down, and that pin is just going to pin that collar in place onto the back of the waistcoat like that. Then I'm going to work with one side. Let's work this left side first. I'm going to take the left side of the collar piece and I'm going to take it and I'm going to finish it off 1/4 inch in from the edge of the waistcoat. And then I'm going to take the other side of the waistcoat and I'm going to measure that in 1/4 inch in from the edge as well. If you want to use your seam gauge, then please go ahead and do so, just so that you can be as accurate as possible. It's just going to mean that we then miss the edge of the collar when we're sewing down this side here. And then what we're going to do now is flatten each side of this collar against the seam, and we're going to against the raw edge of that neck, and that's going to give us the placement for this collar. Put in as many pins as you need to feel comfortable with to hold that in place. So my collar's not got any puckers in it, and on the inside just make sure that you're not pressing any pinning any puckers into your collar. Let's do the other side as well, and it just flatten out quite easily. So that's the inside look with the seam allowance, and there's our collar, and I'm sort of tucking the seam allowance down and pulling the edges of the collar up so that it meets the seam edge of the shoulder, and then I put a pin in, so that's almost like the next notch point. And then if you wanted to, you could put any other pins in along this section here, just to make sure you're comfortable. We're going to tack this first because I have found that that works best. Okay, so just make sure I'm 1/4 inch there. Yes, I am. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like from the inside. It's all kind of creased up, but don't worry about that. And that's what it's going to look like from the other side. So you've got your collar just lying there, and as I straighten that seam out, you can see that's lying flat. So let's take our tacking threads. You need to just thread a needle up with tacking thread. So hand sewing needle, double thickness of thread, not at the end. And then what I'm going to do now is making sure that the end of the collar is 3/4 of an inch away from the edge. I'm just going to sew a little row of running stitches, just holding this collar in place. Just keep looking to make sure that on your actual sewing line you've not got any puckers tacked in to where you are when you are securing this collar down. I think when you're working with multiple layers like this, then it's always best if you can tack first, and there's no reason why you shouldn't, because it will give you a better result in the longer term. And we either take the time to tack or we take the time to unpick if it doesn't go right first time. So it isn't a waste of your time. And it just helps you not lose any of that collar from the edge. We don't want you to sew your seam and then at the end some of the raw edge of your collar is showing on the outside of your waistcoat, because we don't want that. We want it all nicely tucked away. Just make sure that your raw edges are right at the edge, and then do a double stitch at the end just to hold that in place. We can take that off. Okay, once we've got that off, let's take our pins out. We'll keep them intact in a minute or two. We'll have to use those again. But if we look, what's going to happen is when we actually fold this out, we can just sort of do a mock fold out now. Can you see that stand-up collar that you're going to have on your waistcoat? It's look really smart, isn't it? Okay, so the next thing then that we're going to do is just lay that down on your work surface. It's not going to lay flat because that collar is wanting to fold up, but let's take the back of our waistcoat now. Let's find that centre back point on the waistcoat by putting our seam allowances together on our shoulders, and we can then mark that with a pin if we wanted to, like we did the collar, just to give us that halfway point. And then once you've got that, then let's lay down the lining right side down on top of the collar, so the collar is getting sandwiched in between these two layers, and then let's match up those points that we had before. So we've got the centre of the back. We can match up the seam allowance on the top of the shoulders, make sure that that's going to sit right on top of each other. Just make sure your raw edges are together. Let's have a pin in there. Got a few layers to pin through, so just persevere. And now we're going to then match up the point on the edge of the front, again with another pin. This time we're going to go all the way down to the front here, and we're going to match that bottom point just there with a pin. Let's go to the other side. Oh, we can go into the middle here actually first. We're going to put another pin in there first. And if you want to tack this again, you can do. I'm going to just sew it straight as it is. But if this is too many pins for you and you find it very difficult to navigate, then feel free to actually tack this again. So on the other side now, just put the seam allowances on top again for the shoulder. Just find your match points first. That's the best advice I've got for you. And then the end of the front, centre front, so that's going to lie on top of each other properly. Put a pin at the end of the collar just to hold that nice. And then down to the bottom to the hem down here as well. Just put a pin near the bottom of the hem. And then we can actually, once we've got all of that sewn together, we can actually put a pin at the bottom down here. This is the bottom of the side front, so the fronts are, if you remember how the front was, we're putting a pin down the bottom along here. So we've pinned along here, up there, and all the way round here already. Let's do one on the other side here to match these points up. They should match properly because you've cut them from the same pattern piece. And then on the back, let's just match up that back line as well. So let's get the two edges together here, put those together. Let's go over to the other side first and match that. and then let's just splay those two pieces of fabric out, and they should match nicely, raw edges together. And let's put a pin in the middle, and if you need any more pins, then put in whatever you need. So we are a bit pin heavy on here, and that's upside down at the moment. That's our neck edge there, so it's going to look a bit like that. You can see the back of the lining here, and then these are our fronts, 1 and 2, and that's the back, and that's the neckline there. So let's have a go at sewing this all together, shall we? So let's take our machine again. We're going to sew it all with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Let's get rid of some easy pins first. Let's do this flat bottom for the back first. So let's just pop this into the machine, line it up for your 1/4 inch seam allowance, few stitches forward, few stitches back, needle in the work until we take the first pin out. Let's just make sure that when we're working with these types of pattern pieces and this kind of garment, that you just sort of make sure the next inch in front of your presser foot is fine. Don't worry about getting everything all laid perfectly. So long as you just work along 1 inch at a time, you'll be fine. So then let's just sew a little bit along. Let's stop. Let's just make sure everything's all lined up. Let's sew a little bit more. Let's stop and take that centre pin out. Sew a little bit more. Just stop again, just make sure everything's all lined up nicely, and then let's sew a little bit more and reverse at the end. So we've got rid of some pins straight away, which is really nice and easy, because that was just a straightforward seam to be able to sew, and that was that bottom of that centre back there. So now let's take a front. So if I've got mine upside down, look, that's the seam I've just sewn. I'm going to start at this side here, and we're going to sew along the front here, up the side, round the neck, and down the other side. So we're on the seam underneath the arm side where we've got that straight edge. We're leaving that bit open, so this bit here stays open. We're starting down the bottom here to do that bottom hem edge. So again, line it up for your 1/4 inch. Let's do a couple of stitches forward, a couple of stitches back, and let's put our needle in a work, which is really important. And it's nice and easy, straight across the bottom here. And let's just stop 1/4 inch away from the edge of our fabric, of our raw edge. Let's just twist it, make sure, just maybe one more stitch. That's it, that's better. Okay, and pin out. So I left my needle in the work so I could twist my fabric. Now this front edge. I'm just feeling with my finger for the edge of the collar, because we want to make sure we're going to miss that. So again, to that 1/4 inch, take this first pin out because we've secured that now. Needle in the work, lift up the presser foot, and let's twist, and we're going to go around the neck now. So let's just take this nice and steady. So a few stitches round, and let's just twist with our presser foot. Just make sure we're getting everything all right. Let's take our pins out as we go. If we get any puckers, I'll show you how to correct those. Just make sure you're pulling your fabric round at the back to make sure that's all okay. Keep to your 1/4 inch, it's very important. Press the foot up. I can see I've got a bit of bunching going on with mine, so I'm just going to straighten that out slightly. So a bit more. I can see I'm going to have a little pucker just there. So I'm just moving the bulk of the fabric back behind the needle, and that will help get rid of that pucker point. Let's carry on a little bit more. Pin out as we go, making sure that tacking is holding that collar all in place. It is a little bit of a fiddly sew, but keep your needle in the work again, just smooth things out, just take the bulk of that fabric back if you need to. I'm sewing forward until we get off the collar. 1/4 inch, lift up the presser foot, need one more stitch, and then we're going to sew down the front again. Start for that 1/4 inch, and then across the bottom again. And reverse. Needle out of the work, and we can breathe now, because sometimes we hold our breath. Let's take off those starting threads. And what we've got is this. So we can see our front. Here's one front, here's the other front, and here's the centre of the back there. and we've sewn around. Now before we turn this round, we've got to do a little bit of housekeeping. So anywhere where there's a right angle or something that resembles a right angle, I'll tell you what we'll do first. Let's just check it for puckers before we start snipping. So let's just have a look around this neck edge. So I'm having a look around here. I have got a little pucker sewn in there. Let me just have a quick look and see if I can get that one out. Sometimes they'll come out themselves, especially if it's a very busy fabric and it's on the inside, you might be okay. Let me turn over. Now I've got a pucker there. That one will iron out, that one will. So this one we need to correct. Look, can you see how I've got a fold in my fabric just here? So let me show you how we're going to do that. We're going to use a quick unpick. You can find one. Here it is. And the first thing that we're going to do, after Claire's put on her glasses so that we can see this really nice and close up. Tiny stitches, aren't they? Is we are going to see where the actual pucker is, and we're going to take out the stitch that's directly on top of it. Usually you've got one that sort of just is kind of around. So you take that stitch out first. I'm then going to take out the 2 stitches either side of it. There's one. Let's get the other one. Oops, there's the other one. And then on this side, I'm also going to take out just 2 stitches. Usually that, depending on the size of the pucker, that is normally enough just to release the fabric. So now I'm going to smooth the fabric with my fingers and see if it'll lie flat. If it won't lie flat, this one will, but if it won't lie flat for you, you just have to take out some more stitches until when you feel it with your fingers, it will lie flat. And I've got a gap in my stitches there. So now what I do is I put this back into my machine and I'm going to start sewing just before I've taken that stitch out, and I'm going to finish after that stitch there. You don't need to reverse, you're just going to just sew straight. So let's line it back up again. Let's line it up a little bit back, that's it. So start on that exact same line, and now with those fibres all smoothed out as they are, then we can now turn the corner and sew that section again. And by snipping off our threads again, we've now taken the pucker out. Can you see how that's all lying flat? And we've just covered that gap in. So sometimes it's inevitable, especially on these small garments, to actually have a pucker in your work, but it's just knowing how to free that up. I think the others will be okay. I think the others will just press out. Because some of them just are sort of like a pucker up to the sewn line, but they're not actually through the sewn line. So you've just got to decide whether or not you want to alter that or not. Okay, back to where we were at housekeeping. Anyway, you've got a right angle like this. We're going to first take it off at a 45-degree angle to take the corner off, then just snip a smidge more off. Don't go through your stitches. You're going sort of like a couple of fibres away from your stitches. Let's do the one again here. So cut through there, and then a little bit more on each side. Let's go across to this other side, and let's do all of our corners first. So again, this one first, and then we won't miss any. Take that one out, a little bit extra, and then down to the bottom to this one. Straight across first. I find it always easier, and then a little bit extra on each side. If you do go through your stitches by any chance, just put it back in your machine, and just as we bridged the gap with those stitches before, just redo a new line of stitching that's inside the one that you've already done, and that will then reinforce that edge for you. Just get rid of these bits here, because we've got a curved edge here, we need to snip into this. So again, we've got to be brave. We're going to use the point of our snips, and we're going to snip up to, but not through, the stitches on this neck edge, and we're just going to do little snips just along the neck edge there, making sure that you're not going through anything you shouldn't be going through, like that, because that will then help that fabric to stretch out for us when we need it to. If you come to your seam allowances, just take those off at a 45-degree angle at the top there, just to make a little point. I find that works really well to reduce bulk, but without compromising the seam. So that's probably better to see on that side. Look how it looks, how it's trimmed. And we've also got our tacking threads to take out yet, but we'll do that in a minute. So that was the tacking threads holding the collar down, wasn't it? And we're just going to carry along this neck edge, putting these snips in, just into the seam allowance, and just sort of so that you're just a couple of threads breadth away from the actual sewn line itself, and this will help that collar and neck edge just stand and sit really, really nicely. Oops, threads, it's very thick in some places, isn't it, because you're going through 4 levels at least. Right up to that edge there. I'll probably do one on this edge here. Okay, so there's my snips all inside that collar edge. You can see those along that edge. So with our pins again, what we're going to do is let's match up our seam allowances on our shoulders first, on the arm side, and let's put a pin just in there. And then at the end of the side seam here, where we're leaving that open, let's just put a pin here. And then on the other side here on the back, let's put those seams again together, and then let's just put a pin there to hold that. Then let's go to the other side as well. Find your shoulder seams again, put those on top of each other first, because that's a really good reference point. Make sure that that's all right, and put your pin in. And then down to the side edges here, doesn't matter whether you do the front or the back first. Oops. And then put a pin in on either side just to hold that steady for you. So if I just show you now, just pull this back out because that doesn't look like it was. So this is where we were. This is our neck edge with our collar on. That's our front and that's our back. And we're actually sewing. So if I put that front on there, we're sewing this seam here. So these 2 pieces here are joined together like that. And we're going around the arm side here. We've already sewn around the neck edge and we've already sewn across the back edge, but we're just on each side now just going to sew around this arm side edge just here. Hope that all makes sense for you. Right, so let's put the fabric into the sewing machine. We're sewing at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Let's do a few stitches forward, a few stitches back, and then put a needle in our work. And then we can start and pivot because we've got quite a tight curve on this. Let's take our pins out as we get to them. Moving that fabric round. Make sure everything's all lying flat for you. And to the top of the arms, to the top of the shoulder there. Just pivoting around this edge and then reverse on the edge. Take our threads off. I'm going to do the same to the other side as well, and then when I have, because this is a curved edge, this time we're just going to snip through this seam allowance up to, but not through the stitches in that seam allowance. Remember, because it's a curved edge. Curved edges we always snip. Seam allowances, just take those off again like I showed you, just to make that little point. It just does get rid of a little bit of extra fabric where you don't need it. And then let's just carry on doing those snips through that shoulder point. And down around this other side. So the tighter the curve, the closer together your snips should be, remember. And then if I hold this up for you, you'll see how when I pull that straight, can you see how those snips open up to allow the fabric to move? I think you can see that. Okay, let me do the other side and then I'll come back to you and I'll show you how we turn this through. Okay, before we just take this through, let's just take out that those tack-in stitches as well around the neckline, because we won't get access to those really once we've finished sewing our neckline on. Should be using my glasses really in my quick unpick. So just take a few moments and just take your tack-in stitches out that were holding your collar on as well, then that will help. Same principle applies when you're removing your tack-in stitches as it did for removing your tailor's tacks, in that if your thread won't come away easily, then it just means you've pierced through the thread with your sewing machine stitches, and all you need to do then is to cut one side off close to the close to the edge where it's got caught. It's like mine's got caught there, so let me take that off close to the edge there, and then I should be able to give it a little tug and it comes away just nice and easily. Just make sure we've got all of those out. Got another one just here. Okay, so I've clipped both of my arm side, and we've clipped the neckline edge, and we've clipped the right angles. We haven't got any more right angles, but on this stage now we need to now pull through. So we've got to reach inside through the back. So here's our back and here's our front. So we're going to reach in to here and pull that through. So the way that I think you're going to find it best is if you just sort of start this off turning through first. So just take the two sides of your front and just fold it away from each other. And you're heading with your finger inside towards your shoulder seam. And you just want to push that front piece up inside to your shoulder seam. Get it just slide through. And then on the side of the back where it's open, you're then going to reach in through there. You're going to find that front where it's pushed through your shoulder seam. Oops, it's coming out again. Let's use this as a bit of a nudge. And then I can push that through there. So make sure you've got your blade and your point covered, otherwise you will rip through your fabric. We're going to reach into that waistcoat edge. See how it's poking through now? I'm just going to pull that out. It's going to feel wrong at the moment, but don't worry, we'll get there. Okay, there's our front. Just open it out a little bit, just so that we can remember whereabouts we are with that. There's the edge of our collar. And then we're going to do the same on the other one. So let's take away the two sides of the front first, so that we can push the point of that front collar, that front edge in. And then we're going to push with our finger and aim towards the shoulder seam. Then I've got a little pointy thing that I can then press on to push that through. And we're going to push the front through at the shoulder seam into the back, until you can see it coming out, and we can grab hold of it, and then we can pull that out. And then by just folding the back through on itself, you'll be able to follow your collar through. It's going to feel a bit convoluted, but you will get there. Follow your collar through the back, just keep pulling, and eventually everything will come out right. I know that might seem a little strange, but hopefully if you just watch this part and I just get this all straight for you, you'll be able to see just by following the video how that works. I think there's little bits like this sometimes can seem a little bit strange, can't it, with how can that possibly work? But then just like magic, it just does. So there's our collar. Here's our crumpled up back, and here's our crumpled up fronts. So let's straighten everything out. Let's use a pin to just dig into these corners and just get these corners out to the edge. Just be careful not to pull any threads through. If you've got a pointy tool or you use the end of a knitting needle or a chopstick or whatever you use, just make sure you've got some nice sharp corners on the bottom of your waistcoat. So that's going to improve the overall finish. And we can roll that seam in our fingers. That's got that one. Let's come up here now to where the collar is held. And I might need to just catch my collar slightly. It looks like a little bit of my collar's moved out. Can you see just there, look, where I've got some loose threads here? It's not caught the collar quite right. So I do need to get that back in the machine again. But this is what it's all about. It's all about a bit of quality control sometimes. So this arm side here is fine. Let's follow that all the way down. Make sure that's nice. Make sure those stitches are out to the edges, which they are. The bottom's fine because that's not really changed. Didn't get pulled around at all, did it? And let's go on to the other front and pull the ends out of that as well. Let's get a nice crisp corner on this point there. And let's check the end of this collar, make sure that's all stayed in nicely. It should have done with the tacking, but I don't know quite why it's poked out, but it has. Yep, no, this one's fine. So the theory works, operator error, folks. But that's okay. So we've got a collar right up, pretty much up to the end of the edge there. It's just this one, look, where it's just come out. So what I'm going to do is just going to reach inside through the side seam till I get to that collar point, and I'm going to push it back through. I'm just going to do a few more stitches in place in there just to neaten it off. Just push through enough to be able to work with it. You don't have to push it all the way through the other way this time. And what I'm going to do is get a nice little bit of neck edge working through. If you've got yours right and you've not got any problems with your neck edge, then you can just carry on to the next section. But for me, I'm just going to take out a 2 or 3 stitches, maybe 3 or 4 stitches, and I'm going to just make sure that that edge of that collar is in place and is through. That's better. It had just sort of slipped back and out. So I've got that now, and all I'm going to do is now redo those stitches across here where I've compromised it by undoing them with the quick unpick. So it's a bit small to even put a pin in, but I'm just going to hold it together. Just make sure that's all okay. Let's just try turning it around again. Follow that collar along. It's going to look so much better once it's been pressed. And then let's just follow that collar along to this edge of this seam, just here to this point. Just make sure that that's all nice and neat. Yep, that's caught it now. So it just needed that little few extra stitches, just undoing, and the collar pulling down. It had just tipped up slightly into the out of the way of my stitch line. And then what we're going to do now is, using our ironing board and our press mat again, is we are going to press this. Now, when you've got little bits that want to keep turning in on you, one thing you can do is bring your seam right out to the edge, and then you can put a pin in on your pressing mat like this, or on your ironing board, just to sort of like hold it open for you. Just so that we've got everything to the edges, all nice and neatly. And once that's in place, you can just put your press cloth over the top, and then we're going to press this. So hopefully I can show you that's just sometimes, just even with the best sewing in the world, you know, I'm not saying I'm the best sewer in the world, but just sometimes, as much as we tried, there is a little bit of movement in the fabric between sort of getting it pinned in place and then having it go across to our sewing machine, and we just need to make sure that we give ourselves grace to be able to do that. So look at that front now. Look, that looks really nice, doesn't it? Yep. So let's go and do the other front as well now in the same way. Just pin it down onto the ironing board or pressing mat, and that will then just hold that in place. Just be careful you don't burn yourself on your iron. I've done that before on camera. And if you are finding if you are finding any benefit in these videos for either Lilly Rose Dolls or any of the other videos that I do, then I'd love it if you'd consider subscribing to my channel. I'm really close to 4,000 subscribers. 4,000, I wish. 3,000 subscribers. And it's always lovely to know that you're there. So if you're very happy to, I would be very grateful to you to do that, because I do appreciate every single one of the people who take the time to watch my videos and who hopefully enjoy them. Okay, so that's got the two fronts now straightened out. Let's now just tidy up that collar, because that's a different direction, isn't it? And sometimes ironing and pressing these small garments is quite fiddly. But by using the pins into the pressing mat, I have found that that does help to get you a nice result. Quite a curve on the back of this waistcoat. So let's just pull that down. And let's just go under the arms here. Pull that out to the seam allowance and press that down. And the other thing that's quite difficult with the back of the waistcoat is those darts as well. They do want to fold this fabric in a certain way. So just use the nose of your iron and just go in between those pins and on the edges, and it will just help to get things started off. And then we can remove the pins that are in the way and just repress without the pins in place when you can actually get into it a bit more, and that will help too. Let's just do this arm side. And I mean, some people would say just fast forward it past all of this, but sometimes you need to know how long it takes to do something. And I think that sometimes we give ourselves a lot of hassle because we think that somebody's done it in 2 seconds flat and it's taken us 10 seconds to do something. But hopefully by showing you what care you need to take and how long it takes me, that it then reassures you that you're taking an average amount of time rather than an extortionate amount of time. I'm just going to try and fold this collar up. You see how the collar's standing up nice and neatly now, and we're just going to go around this collar, and I'm just going to use the nose of the iron just to iron that nice and flat so that stands up nicely. Right, this next bit then can be a little bit daunting, and I think probably will be better done by hand in actual fact, because what we need to do now is we need to join the fronts onto the back like that. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to sort of take our waistcoat so that we've got the right side together, and we're going to fold the front over the back, so over here, and then you're going to separate your lining from your outer fabric. It's going to feel really weird. So you're going to kind of pinch inside your garment like that. You want your underarm seams together and you want the hem together as well. But if you look down there, hopefully you can see how I'm holding those two outer seams together. Let's just put a pin there to hold that together in the middle. So just through the outer, not through the lining. And then now I want you to roll these together so that you've got the hem at the bottom together. I've still got my fingers inside, look. You see how my fingers are inside there? And let's put a pin at the bottom. And then we're going to do the same at the top at that underarm. So again, just hold that together so you've just got the outside of the fabrics together. Might be better if I turn that way around actually. And then, so whichever way you can, I'll show you in a second. So I've got a pin in the middle, believe it or not. That one's a bit of a skew-if angle, isn't it? Let me just straighten that one up. That's it. And then we've got those side seams. Can you see on there? Look how it is. So the pins are holding the two outers, and we're going to sew that together first so that that gives us the seam that's making our jacket as a complete round look for our waistcoat. And then we'll then tuck the linings in one inside the other once we've done that seam first, and then we'll tuck these in and that will then lie flat together. Let me show you what I mean. So I've got my hand sewing needle and I've got my little knot at the end. Let's start down at the bottom here. So again, I'm putting my fingers just inside, and I want to start with those seam allowances down the bottom. So you can kind of pull the rest of your waistcoat edges, so the linings together. So just so it exposes that seam, and we want 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's go through with our needle first and do a couple of stitches just in place, just on that guesstimated 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to do a little back stitch along here. So with a back stitch, you take the stitch forward, but then you come back and you take a start. So my thread's coming out here, and I'm going back in behind that where the thread's coming out, and then half a stitch forward again. It's just a slightly stronger stitch than a running stitch, because we want this to look nice, don't we, when it's finished, nice and tight. And we're keeping to that 1/4 inch seam allowance as we're going through, and I'm just sewing through the outer fabric. I'm not catching the lining at all. The lining's still completely free at this point. Take your pins out as you go. As you start to go up to the top here, just start to move your fabric so that you've got to where your pin is, and you can again just pull the lining round slightly so that it makes sure that it's sort of out of the way. Just doing those stitches. We can neaten this up afterwards if we need to. Take that pin out now that we're at the top there. And so I'm now onto the seam allowance at the top. So a very small little opening that we're working with. So just, if you need a cup of tea, then pop off and have a cup of tea and then come back to it. Sometimes that can help if things are a bit frustrating. And I'm going to do a double stitch just through the seam allowance, well, through the seam allowance going through to the side. So that's what it's like now. So I've got my needle and thread still attached. If we look from this side, you can see that the underarm seam there's our arm side, and here's that seam I've just sewn, is sewn on the outer fabric, but look, the lining is still completely free. Because what we're going to do now is if we tuck, let's work with the lining. So if we tuck the seam allowances towards the front, and we turn, so the seam allowance is just getting all pushed inside that seam that gap we've left open. And if we turn under 1/4 inch on this edge here of the lining front, and then that will place just there, then that gives us a nice neat edge there. Look, can you see we've got no raw edges? And what I can do then is, using my needle, I can just push those raw edges inside this underarm seam. It's just trying to give us a nice finish. If your character's not going to be undressed and you're struggling with this, then what I would suggest you do is leave your raw edges like that, sew along it with the machine, all 4 sides together, neaten it with a zigzag stitch, and then it will be neat enough. But it's not a finish that I like, so that's why we're going to the trouble, and that's why we've only sewn the outer, and this is the instructions that Claire gives you as well. And then I'm pushing all of those seam allowances for the lining inside the front of the waistcoat, and I've turned over 1/4 inch on that raw edge there. And then using my needle point, I can make sure that that raw edge is right inside there, because it's got a tendency to want to just come out. And let's just take half a stitch through the lining just to bring the needle out onto the right side of where we want to work. So I'm just tucking my lining inside that front edge. It doesn't want to go. Come on, you can do it. That's it. And then I'm going to take a stitch that's going to be a little slip stitch that's going to attach the side seam of the lining to the side seam at the back. So just a small stitch, almost as small as you can, so it's nice and invisible, nice on the edge there. And we're just catching all of that down together. And you're trying not to go through onto the outside of your fabric, it's just catching the line. Just use the point of your needle just to lift up the lining, back lining slightly. Make sure you've got no loops in your thread. It's just going to neaten all of that, and you've got a couple of threads there. Let's just push those inside with the needle. Point of your needle just to lift up the lining slightly so that you're not going all the way through to the outer fabrics. And then no loops in your thread. Oh, lots of things to remember, isn't there? Sorry. And then we're just going to sew down this seam here. And with any luck, it should be fairly invisible, and you won't be able to tell that's where it's been closed up. Hand stitching is one of those things that I know a lot of people try and avoid. It is one of those things though that does improve with practice. So again, if I can give you any encouragement to have a go with your hand stitching, over time it will improve and then you will then be happier with it. Once you've got down to the bottom, do a couple of stitches in place just to sort of like act as a knot, and then when you're ready, just go in through the two different sides of the fabric and you putting the needle along through but not out, and it's going to come up about an inch further up, and this is going to give us a long end so that it won't fray. And then if we put some pressure on the threads before we snip it off, then when we straighten out those threads, the seam, then the threads disappear inside. And can you see how that is under the arm? That's the outside, and that's how it looks on the inside. So I think that's quite nice and neat in the end. It's just that little fiddliness to do it. So now I'm going to do exactly the same with this side. I'm not going to record this side because you've seen it once, and you can just rewind the video if you need to. I'm just taking off some of these frayed edges before I even start. And just rewind the video and just have a little look. And as I say, if not, and you're really struggling, just put your two raw ends together, sew across with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, zigzag it, and then you'll still have a nice neat outside. And especially if your character isn't going to be undressed, and don't forget there is going to be a jacket over the top of this waistcoat as well, so that should work for you quite nicely. Okay, let me just carry on with doing this side and I'll come back to you when we're ready for finishing it up. We're nearly there. Okay, so once you've got those side seams sewn and everything's all neat on the inside, then I just did give that another little press with my iron, just so that that's all sitting all nicely. The moment of truth comes when we actually get to try it on him. So let's just get our character. Let's pop his arms through. That fits nicely, and through the other side as well. Just going to have to bend your arm a little bit, Byron, to get that on. And here we have his little waistcoat. So it's quite a short one. That's the way that it should be. Stand his collar up at the back. And then we're looking to see how much this is going to overlap. So he's a boy, so I usually hold him against me, and so left has to go over right, doesn't it, on a boy? So let me just work out where those little buttons are going to go and where. So press studs are going to go on that side and on that side. So just put some pins just by holding him against my chest, facing away from me, then I can determine that the left side is going to go over the right side. We don't have a lot of wrap over, so I can't be too generous when I'm doing my press studs, but I think from the pattern it's just 3 towards the bottom. Look, just here, 3 towards the bottom, and then the front of this sort of jacket sort of folds out slightly. So I've just marked where my press studs are going to go. So it does fit, Byron, that's all good news. And I've got my pins in now, so I've put my pins in whilst it was on place so I could see whereabouts that those needed to go for the press studs. We've got our buttons inside here as well, haven't we, still? And I'll just take out this bit of ribbon because that's for his little necktie, isn't it? So let's just hold that to one side in the kit. We've got the 3 little buttons. So let me just grab my press studs first, and I'll just be back here with a hand sewing needle, and we'll be ready to sew the press studs on first. So I've got my hand sewing needle with my thread in to match my jacket. I've also got some of these press studs. I don't know what you call them, press snaps, I think, possibly. I call them press studs. They're a 2-part thing with a little bucket and a little point. And I'm going to sew. First of all, we're going to sew the buttons on the top because we can go through both sides with sewing those buttons on. I think that will help best. So let's just open up our packet. Make sure you don't lose these because they do like to ping off everywhere. Ask me how I know. And we're going to start off with sewing one button at the bottom here. So the button is going to go on the top. So as if you turn the sort of like the collar of the waistcoat to you, so it's upside down, you sort of can hold it to yourself to see. So this is the left side, which is going to go on top. And so on the bottom here, I'm just going to put, just going to go through some of the fibres, just through onto the fabric. So I've got the knot there. And then I'm going to thread my button in and out onto my needle. through the holes, and I want to have all of the holes on the button going acrossways on the waist on the front, so that I've not got a messy front to my jacket. So just lining up my holes on my jacket so that they're going across, and then once I'm happy I can take a stitch through to the other side of my jacket, waistcoat. Straighten up those holes again. Just use the point of your needle if you need to. And I'm right on the edge of the waistcoat. There's not a lot of room to play with, because I do like to stuff my characters quite full. So he's had one too many pies, but that's okay. I'm just going to do about 3 or 4 stitches through each button, just making sure I don't get any loops on the top of my buttons either. Okay, so that's 4 stitches through that one. So then what I'm going to do is just sort of eyeball where I want these buttons to go, because I think that they're supposed to be quite kind of low down. So let me get my seam gauge and I'll tell you how spaced mine look like they are going to be. Get a pin, that will help us, won't it? So if I put a pin through the button and sort of, oops, and then pin it on the front, then that's good. See what I mean about them liking to slip off everywhere? Let's put that one just there. So it's almost like quite a short waistcoat on him, isn't it, really? So let's just place those on just to start off with. I can see they're not evenly spaced at the moment. That one's going to go up a little bit higher. And I'm just trying to, all right, so they're going to be 1/2 inch apart. So there's 1/2 inch from the centre of one button to the centre of the next one. And that one there just needs to come down just slightly. Apologies for the car noise. I live in an apartment over here in Spain, and I've got the window open because it's a lovely evening, and I thought that the air would be nice coming into my sewing room. So those are my buttons, and they're 1/2 inch apart. And because they're so close, rather than break my thread off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to travel up behind the inside of the jacket. So I'm going to put where I've sewn my first button on, I'm going to then travel up inside the fabric of the jacket, so that makes sure my needle's not come through on the other side, and to where that pin's showing through, just come through onto the wrong side. Lots of pins all in the way at the moment. Just make sure that thread's going through there nicely. Not going to leave a knot. Just saves me having to break off my thread. And then before we do anything else, let's just take a stitch in place on the back of here, because that will just stop this thread then from pulling tight and cinching anything in. And what I can do then is make sure that my holes on my button are straight, and I can then go through the back of this button. Take my pin out as I go. Caught that one by mistake, and then holding the ends of the button, the holes of the button in the right place, then I can just put a stitch through. Right, that's got it. Did anybody else talk to them? Well, I talk to all of you while I'm sewing. I wonder if you all talk to yourselves, or whether you're answering me back or not. If you know how to sew your buttons on, then just go ahead and just do it any way you like. So there's 2 on. So now let's just travel up in between again here. Thread your needle through, and you're just going to come out to the area at the back. Just make sure you've not come through. And then just take a stitch at the back there, just to sort of anchor those threads down, just before you start to place your button. we go. So we've got 1, 2, 3 now. Just check before you finish them off that they're just all where you want them to be. And then I can just put some more stitches through on this last one just to hold that in place. Hopefully that's all been on camera and not... Sometimes I look up and I think, oh, am I on camera or not? So I've got 3, so if you look at the way that the character is dressed here, look, the 3 buttons are quite low down here, and then it opens up and he's got his little neckerchief underneath. And I feel that that's what I've done there. But if you wanted to, if you think that you want to have your buttons a bit higher, just space those out a little bit higher up as you're going on your character. This is where you can put in a little bit of your own design choice. And then what I'm going to do then is I've still got my thread attached and I've got my 3 buttons on. So now I'm going to sew the bucket of the press stud onto the back of each of those buttons. So just take a little bite of your fabric and then just go through one of the holes on the back of your press stud. Just make sure each time you're sewing that you're not taking anything from the top of your stitches aren't going all the way through, and your buttons should be there to sort of kind of help you, but you're just sort of picking up a few threads with your needle and then through the hole. You're not going all the way through to the other side. Just keep checking. Then I just travel along between the 2 layers to the next hole. And then do the same thing there. It is quite delicate sewing in order to get this to work, but you can do it. I have every confidence in you. And just make sure again that you're not going through. I'm doing about, my characters don't get played with, so I'm doing about 3 stitches through each hole on these press studs, and then I'm going to travel along to the next one. And then just keep checking, because if you don't go too far without you noticing, you can just undo your threads. But if you go too far, you have to unpick the whole thing and start again. And you know, some of these construction techniques, especially adding the collar, is exactly the same as if you were making a waistcoat for a child or an adult and adding a collar to it. The steps are exactly the same to making the collar and to attaching it onto the waistcoat or jacket. So when you are making these characters, just know that you are actually learning transferable skills for dressmaking, for if ever you wanted to sew for children or for yourself or for adults, then all of these skills that you are learning are exactly the same as you would need. Right, so that's that one sewn on. I think I'm only going to put, because my press studs are quite big, so I'm going to put one on the top and one on the bottom. So I'm going to travel down again without having to finish off my thread down towards the bottom, at the bottom of the other button, and then I'm going to sew my next press stud on exactly the same way. And then what I'm going to do is then fold this over, mark with a little bit of chalk where those press studs meet onto the waistcoat, and I'm going to sew the other half of the press stud onto the other part just there, so that then that'll snap shut when he's wearing his waistcoat, and he'll be all ready. So if you want to go ahead and do that, I don't think you need to see me sew anymore. I don't want to bore you to death with how long this video is, and then I'll meet you at the end. Okay, so I've ended up just putting 2 press studs on mine. I've popped it back onto my character here, Byron. I'm tucking his trousers up because I've looked on the picture, and the bottom of the waistband the bottom of the waist seam for the jacket goes onto the waistband of hides the waistband of the trousers. So let's just pop this back on. It is quite a tight fit, but we want it to look smart, don't we? So there is the waistcoat on there. So just line up the centre seam of the trousers with the centre seam of the waistcoat. Just make sure you see those top buttons, and that's how we're looking at the moment. And then what we've got then is we've got this neckerchief piece of crushed ribbon. So let's put that around the back of your neck, Byron. I wonder if we can do it twice actually. I think what I'm going to do is do it like a cravat. So I'm going to go from the front back first, so we get a bit of a cravat kind of action going on. And then I'm going to then tie this loosely around the front. think it'll be in a bit of a bow, but then I think I'll do long loops and then tuck the long loops in. It'll give that cravatty kind of look, hopefully. Let's tuck that in around the back. If you've seen Claire's characters on the stand at any of her shows, then you'll see how lovely they do look. She styles them beautifully, doesn't she? Hope to try and emulate some of that. So there he's got his little neckerchief underneath there. Can't see because of the light. And there he's got his waistcoat on, which like the picture is quite low down there. It's covering the top of his trousers. And I think that's all done, folks. So let me turn the camera around. Just fiddling around with it a little bit more, but just to get it to sit right. And there's the back of it all, looking all nice on the back there for him. Collar just folds over slightly, doesn't it? But that just into his neck edge. The back of his trousers, that's going to be covered by his jacket though. Yeah, let me just turn the camera around and we'll have a roundup. Apologies if the lighting is a little bit off, but it's a little bit later on in the night now, obviously. And we have finished Byron. Can you see him with the lights overhead? I don't know if you can see properly, but he's got a lovely waistcoat on. Let me bring it a little bit further. Oh, there you go. You can see now with his lovely 3 buttons down the front there. He's got his lovely cravat on under there, the lovely stand-up collar on his waistcoat, and there's the back of him as well. So I hope you've enjoyed sewing along with me today. I've certainly enjoyed having you here with me, keeping me company. So thank you for that. If you haven't subscribed already, I'd love it if you would consider subscribing to my channel. There's no pressure though, but it is always nice to know that you're there. And I hope that you've really enjoyed mastering the art of making a waistcoat and that you're happy with how that looks for your character. Excuse me. If you have a character that has a different waistband, then obviously these, you know, the steps can be pretty much the same. On this one, that made it different to the one for Harvey that I've done before. So there's another video for Harvey's waistcoat, is that this one had a collar on it. So this one is, so that was the detail that was extra to that. As again, my thanks go to Claire and Richard of Lilly Rose Dolls for gifting the characters and the kit to me in order that I can bring you the video. But I'm really thrilled with that. It looks really quite smart, doesn't he? So yeah. Thank you everybody for watching. I'll see you soon. We've got his jacket to make finally and then he's all done. So I'll see you next time for the video to make his jacket. Have a great day everybody. Happy stitching. Bye.